Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you come back for the next episode covering the points of this conversation.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_Pod.
Follow me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
Follow me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
Join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, on one of my social media platforms, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean, and here with me is Chris Kent. Hello, Mr. Kent.
Hello, sir.
Today we have an enlightening conversation in store for you. We're joining Tess Jewell-Larsen, a stress burnout coach, with a wealth of experience in holistic stress management. Tess, how are you?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Tess, I guess before we dive into the depths of stress management, can you share a bit about your background and what inspired you to become a stress and burnout coach?
Yeah. So I had my own experience with stress and burnout, which led me to doing this. But sort of in a nutshell, ever since I was little, I've always struggled with anxiety. And so growing up, I, spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to support myself with that. So I tried meditation, I tried yoga. Most of the time, especially when I was younger, that was like not something that I was really into, which is funny now because that's mainly what I work with and do. But at the time, it was like not something I was connecting with. So a lot of what I was really connecting with was going outside and just spending a lot of time in nature. I'm originally from Oregon. You might not notice that from my accent, but I am originally from Oregon. And so that was something that was really important to me, was going outside and spending time in nature. And that's where I sort of had my happy place. But then over the years, and I've moved quite a bit. And so I had to kind of learn how to find other things that supported me, which is why I started into the meditation and the yoga. And even though at first I didn't really get into it, there was something about it that I thought, hey, this is actually beneficial. I just have to kind of find my own way into it. Which I eventually did. And then probably about 8 years ago now, I started in a job that helped me live here in Spain. I'm in Spain, northern Spain for everyone. And I was teaching. I like teaching, but not necessarily teaching English. It wasn't very fascinating to me. But it was a way that I could live here. And I was doing this job that I didn't really like, we'll put it that way. I was sort of forcing myself to look past things that I didn't enjoy, just to keep going on with my daily life. And because of that, I started cutting out other things that I enjoyed because, once you start disconnecting from one thing, it's kind of this ripple effect of things that you just start disconnecting from. And I was realizing over a course of several years that I had been much more disconnected from myself. I was not in a good place mentally. I was struggling a lot more with anxiety again. And then 2020, we all know what happened in 2020. COVID hit, and it was a real eye-opener for me of how dark things had really gotten for me. I had, over the years, been experiencing more panic attacks and things like that, but I hadn't really put two and two together what was going on. I was just thinking, oh, well, I'm just kind of falling back into these old things that I used to and not really doing anything about it. And then when COVID hit, it was kind of this really big eye-opener to me that I was not in a good place. And I needed to make a lot of changes in my life. And one of those changes was really looking at how I could support myself. And mentally and physically, I ended up injuring myself quite badly. And I ended up quitting my job, actually, and just kind of focusing on doing things for me. I thankfully had the support of my family to be able to do that. And I started studying a lot of how I could support myself. And that's kind of where that focus of yoga and mindfulness and somatic healing really started coming in. I was already a yoga teacher, so that's something that I'd already done, but it was just sort of a fun thing. Like I trained for it, but I hadn't really started teaching it. It was mainly just for me. And obviously there was something in the background that like my head knew I had to start doing something different, but other parts of me was, still in that disconnected spot, right? And so I was really focusing a lot more on how I could support myself. And through that, because I quit my job, I started teaching yoga and I started sharing what I was learning with people. And I was realizing that they were gaining a lot from that. So it wasn't just me that was gaining from it, but because of my experiences, because of what I was learning through those experiences and my studies, I was able to share this knowledge with other people and they were benefiting from it. And the coolest thing that I was realizing is not only were they benefiting from it, but they were sharing it with others and those others were benefiting from it. So it was this really awesome ripple effect. And it wasn't that negative ripple effect that I was experiencing before, but it was this really positive ripple effect that was happening. And so I was like, you know what, this is what I should be doing, at least for right now. And so I dove into it more and sort of focused in on the stress and burnout aspect of supporting others that are going through similar things that I was, and hopefully not getting to the point that I got to personally.
Okay, so I'm curious with the stress and burnout focus, did that come about because that's where your transition into the yoga and meditation came from, or was there another byproduct for that?
Some of it definitely. I think that I've always been fascinated with how people work, how we work as a society, how we work ourselves. So, like in my undergrad, I studied bioanthropology. My main focus was journalism, but I did like sort of a minor of bioanthropology. Well, not total minor, but almost. Anyway, doesn't matter. I studied bioanthropology, and then my master's was in anthropology. And so I've always been really fascinated with how people work and how I work with myself. And I also come from a fairly sort of healthcare science background. My mom is a nurse. My grandma was a nurse. My sister-in-law is a doctor. You can see the aspect there. And then my dad is an engineer. So at the first, like coming into the yoga world was fairly difficult for me because I was like, whoa, this is like totally against everything that I know and understand. But then the more I started digging into it, the more I realized that it's not that different. It's just looking at it from slightly different lenses. And so, now we do have a lot more science background of looking at yogic practices, not necessarily that was needed, but it's interesting for someone that comes from that background to see that, there is a lot of science and there is a lot of proof that these things do work. And then, so sort of taking all of that and understanding how this can support people is really been fascinating for me. And then also because of my experiences and what I've gained from it myself, that's also been a really interesting way to kind of move forward with it. So I guess, does that answer the question? It's kind of a mixture of all of the above.
Yeah. So the journey, of course, that everybody takes to get to where their job, their real passion is always, tough and filled with all kinds of ups and downs and detours. But it seems like you really found the thing that you're meant to do.
Yeah, definitely. At least for right now, everything always, everything has its way of changing and nothing stays the same forever. But I definitely love what I do and I am super passionate about it. And yeah, I definitely have my friends that are like, Tess, stop talking about it. Because I'll just start chatting about it. It's fun though, because my sister-in-law is a CBT therapist. And so when we get together, we just go into depth on these things, and actually so much so we had decided we're going to start a podcast about all of this. So we started our podcast, The Happy Edit, because of that, because our friends and families were like, stop talking about this with us. So we're like, fine, we'll put it on a podcast so other people that are interested in it can listen in.
Well, so that's interesting. You started a podcast, about this type of atmosphere. Can you share some themes or other topics that you explore in your show and how they contribute to building a foundation for happiness?
Yeah. So, I mean, we look at lots of different aspects. So, actually, our upcoming season is all about the senses. And so, looking at how our senses support us and how we can connect to those senses. And, because so much of what overall health is, it's not just, okay, we need to go for, a run or need to walk every day or eat healthy food, but we also need to, think about like what makes us happy, what makes us feel negative about things, how are we talking to ourselves, how are we connecting with others, right? What are our social connections, how do they look like? And so we're exploring all of that through different lenses. Because my background now is more, with the yoga and mindfulness. Hers is with the more traditional psychotherapy, CBT. But then we're also bringing people in from lots of different backgrounds as well to kind of explore what that means to them. And it's really fun. Like I said, right now we're looking at how our senses are, support us and how we can connect to those senses, so what's something that you can smell or taste or feel or feel or well, I'm totally blanking on the other one. Anyway, everyone knows the senses. But like, what are these things that we connect with every single day, but don't necessarily notice? And so how can we pause and take that time to really focus in on those things to support us? What is something that brings us joy that we don't necessarily realize? Maybe that joy is, oh, I really like seeing things that are, yellow and happy. Can I bring more of that into my life? Can I just pay attention to what colors are interesting to me? What about smells? Are there any smells that really, lift me up when I'm feeling down? That sort of thing. That's only one aspect of it, but that is, such an important thing that we don't necessarily explore for ourselves or really notice. So how can we take that time to pause and sort of see what works for us to build that foundation of happiness?
Yeah, and what an interesting approach to that as well. Using just the things that are already in your everyday kind of life to see value in really and gather that joy that are from those things. What an interesting approach to that. Very good.
Thank you. Yeah, we think it's fun, and I think it's something that is accessible for everyone. For both of us, I think that's something that's really important. It's our health has to be accessible. It has to be sustainable. So what are things that we already have that we can turn to? What are things that, we can use on an easily and readily on a daily basis that can support us? I think it's, there's a lot of times that there's a lot of good things that you can do that are extra, but realistically, especially when you're just getting started and you're just starting to reconnect with yourself and you're just starting, on your journey, we have jobs, we have kids, we have lots of extra responsibilities that take up a lot of our time. And so, when you're feeling that overwhelm, when you're feeling burnt out, you're not going to want to do lots of extra things because you're already feeling overwhelmed. So what is something that you're already doing? What's something that's already there that you can turn to? And I think that for myself, and I know for Sarah, my sister-in-law, who's my co-host, that's something that's really important to us.
Well, and of course, it's clear that persistent stress can take a toll on your life. And I just wonder, can you elaborate on the physical, emotional, mental impact of that persistent stress, especially, on women in a professional roles?
Yeah. Okay. So persistent stress, as you say, has so many different ways that it can affect us, right? Physically, stress increases tension in the body. So your muscles are tenser, right? Stress increases hormones like cortisol, which is good in short doses, but long term, this is not good for your body because while it helps you, move to get out of these dangerous situations that your body is signaling, if it's there for too long, then it cuts off things like oxytocin, serotonin, right, which are really important for our body to function properly. It increases inflammation in our body. So if, for example, you're already feeling some sort of discomfort in your body, that's going to increase that discomfort, right? And then it becomes this negative cycle because the more that increases, then the more discomfort you feel, and the more your body tenses, the more pain and just, it's this, as I say, it's a negative cycle. So a lot of people that have this persistent stress and sort of a more short term might feel more pain in their body. So they might feel more, back pain, for example. They might clench their jaw more often. They might feel like, when you get that twitching in your eye, or you're not able to sit still and your leg is twitching, right? This is your body telling you that it's has a lot of pent up stress and tension. But over lots of years, this can be really detrimental to your heart health, for example, because it puts a lot of stress on your heart. And one of the leading causes of death in our society is cardiac disease. So if, we're looking at what's the cause of that, a huge portion of that, I mean, obviously there's lots of different reasons, but a huge portion of it is persistent stress, because we're not releasing the stress from our body. We're not allowing it to, to be processed and let it go. Our body was designed to, have this increase of stress, hormones, and tension, so it can get us out of dangerous situations. Like if we're, being attacked by a bear or something. But as soon as we get away from that bear, right, the stress hormones are supposed to release, and we're supposed to be able to go back into that parasympathetic, that calm, rest, digest part of our nervous system. That's where we're able to digest. We're able to digest our food better. We're able to digest our experiences better. And when we're not able to go into that calm, rest, digest part of the body, right, our body doesn't function the way it should. So that's kind of the background of the physical aspect of that. But then that also goes up and it affects us mentally, right? Because if our body is constantly stressing about what's going on, right? Because it's picking up these signals that's saying, oh, I'm not safe. So mentally, you're going to think, oh, whether it's conscious or not, oh, I'm not safe. So you're going to start to maybe overthink things, leading to anxiety. Maybe you're going to sort of focus on things in the past that you can't change. So that might lead to a little bit more of depression. You might be constantly hyper vigilant and, just constantly looking out for things that are going to hurt you more. And you're not going to start focusing on the things that are maybe going to bring you that joy and that happiness. So it's this negative cycle that it can really pull you down. So in a professional standpoint, what could this look like? Well, you could be, not sleeping properly, so you're not able to focus as well at your work. You're constantly being nervous about what could happen and whether and the aspect of something bad happening to you, instead of looking at, oh, what could be the positive things that could come out of that, right? You could feel overwhelmed, right? I have all of these things I have to do. I can't do any of them. So you just get stuck. It leads to major fatigue eventually, right? Because your body cannot continue. You can only do that for so long. And then after a certain point, then it just doesn't anymore. So you can get sick. You can, just not be able to function the way that you want to be functioning in various situations. Mood swings are a huge part of persistent stress as well. Like going from sort of these highs to these lows, because, you're just going up and down, and it's not really very easy to stay sort of in that middle ground. There's a lot of things that can show up for people. It just depends. Everyone, kind of deals with it differently. So it depends on how this this shows up for people, but it is sort of that background of your body is constantly looking out for you, and when it is in that persistent stress mode, it doesn't relax well and it doesn't process things well. So when we're able to come into a more calmer, more relaxed state, then we're able to process better. We're able to focus better. We're able to digest better. We're able to move and be easy in our surroundings, whatever those surroundings are.
And I can imagine most people probably have the same type of warning lights that are flashing off for people. But I think part of what I'm understanding you say is part of it is being aware of what those warning signs are, and then finding, okay, there's the warning signs. I got one here, I got one here, I got one here. All these things, they're telling me to do something, but I don't know necessarily what to do. And I think that, step number one is realizing that, hey, these are warning signs. It's not just part of, getting older or whatever people are telling you. But then, the second part of that is, what do they do about it? Which is, I suppose they would reach out to somebody like you to help them in that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different things that you can do about it. Definitely one of them would be reaching out to a coach, but you could also, reaching out to a doctor as well, depending on how severe things are, right? Or to a psychologist, right? It really just depends on where you are in your journey and what you need in that moment. But I think that the first thing that is always important is that awareness of what is happening, because so often we don't even know what our triggers are, right? We just feel overwhelmed, and someone might say something that sets us off, or something might happen that sets us off, and on one side we think, well, that's ridiculous, why is that making me so upset? But it does, right? And you don't really process it and you just keep going. And so, yeah, it's that awareness of, okay, what are my triggers? And what can I do to take a step back? So in that moment, like something that I would, suggest for anyone is just to take a moment to pause and just sort of ground themselves. So how can they do that? Just noticing your feet on the ground can be really powerful, right? Just, okay, I am here. Because when we're in the present, we're not in that necessarily in that stress mode, right? We're not in that anxiety. Anxiety and stress are in the past, they're in the future. But if we're fully present right now, then we're in more of that calmer state, because we're realizing, okay, I'm safe right here, right now, unless like there's literally a bear attacking you, right? But most of us don't have that issue, hopefully. And so it's like, okay, my feet are on the ground, I'm sat in a chair, right? So you're just physically feeling your body in the moment where you are, right? Another aspect or another idea that, bringing your index finger to the base of your thumb and just tracing the finger up the thumb. Can I feel the finger against the thumb? Can I feel the sensation of that? Can I hear it? Right? And then take your finger down the thumb, and you can switch to the rest of the fingers, and, your thumb going up and down the rest of your fingers, just noticing that, right? Bringing yourself back into the present moment can be so powerful, because it's that reminder that, oh, I'm okay right now. And if I'm okay right now, then I can take that next step forward to, decide how I'm going to move forward, how I'm going to react or respond, I should say, instead of react to the situation. And it's just those little brief moments that we can take at the beginning to really help us go, oh, okay, all I need to do is this pause, and then I can figure out what that next step is. Maybe I need to ask for more support. Maybe I just need that pause of clarity, and then I can take the next step myself. So those are like really, really, really small things that we can do that can be super beneficial.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You emphasize holistic practices like yoga and mindfulness and somatic healing in managing stress. And I'm curious, number one, people have all kinds of ideas and mindsets of what, mindfulness and yoga and somatic healing are. I guess part number one to this question is, can you kind of define what those means? And then the next part would be, how do these practices contribute to healing and managing stress effectively?
Yeah. So let's start with mindfulness. Mindfulness is literally means awareness with without like with objectivity. So like you're not judging anything, you're just being aware. And this can be brought in lots of different ways. I think a lot of people think that mindfulness like means, oh, it's just meditation, so you have to sit and you have to meditate, and that is an aspect of mindfulness, but literally you could bring mindfulness in. You're at your desk and you look around and you're just focusing on the different things that you have around you, right? Once again, coming back to the senses mentioned before, just bringing your awareness to all 5 of your senses. What can I see? What can I hear? What can I smell? Is there something I could maybe taste right now? Is there something I can feel? Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean with my hands, but maybe I feel the floor under my feet. Maybe I feel the chair under my glutes or something like that. Right. So it's just that bringing that awareness into the present moment. And then yoga. Yoga is not just doing crazy pretzel-like postures. That is that actually, you don't have to do crazy pretzel-like postures. Since my injury, that is not possible for me. But I can still be a very good yoga teacher, because what is yoga? Yoga literally is yoga is awareness. And through that awareness, figuring out what's the best thing that can support us. Yoga, in a way, it sounds sort of cheesy, but yoga is love, because yoga is about connecting with breath. It's about connecting with movement. It's about connecting with what we have around us. That includes people, that includes our environment. And it's about taking that time to just sort of observe how we can best support ourselves in that moment. So that could be through movement, that could be through breath work, that could be through just taking a moment to pause. Sort of the 3 pillars of yoga is breath, relaxation, and awareness. And so if you think about that, like this idea that we have of yoga, of like, going into these crazy postures, Instagram yoga, yes, that can be very fun. And I'm not taking away from that at all. Right. And that can be a really good way to get into that, into yoga. Like when I first started getting into yoga, like it was the more of the physical classes that were entertaining to me than the more of the quiet stuff. Right. But there's so much more to it than just these postures. And somatic work is literally just coming back to the body. It's a mind-body connection. So as was talking about before, when we have this stress in the body, when we've experienced trauma, right, this gets stored in the body. And it gets stored in the body when we're not able to digest it, when we're not able to really understand it and let it go. So somatic work is working with the body, with breath, with movement, with awareness, to be able to start releasing that from the body itself. So we don't necessarily, we don't go into story, right? It's not about processing story. If you need a process story, that's where, your therapist comes in. But it's about working through those things in the body. Okay. So for example, with, if you have persistent pain, we were talking about that earlier, if you're scanning through your body, the first thing you're probably going to notice is the parts of your body that are in pain. But there's other parts of your body that don't necessarily experience that pain, but we don't focus on them because it's not what's first kind of jumping out at us. So if we can scan through the body and go, okay, so I'm experiencing pain in my back. Is there somewhere else in my body that doesn't experience that pain? Maybe it has the opposite feeling, or maybe it's just a neutral feeling. So can I find those places? And then can I go back and forth with my awareness, maybe with movement, right? maybe I'm moving in one way that feels good, and then I'm moving in another way that feels like, oh, that's a little bit much. Okay, so how can I, go through this awareness, going back and forth between these opposites to be able to neutralize things? Because a lot of times with pain isn't, unless it's an acute pain because we have an injury of some sort that is acutely done. A lot of pain comes from the wiring of our brain that is saying something is wrong, and I'm going to call out on that pain, probably because of an experience that we've had before, right? And so if we can start to rewire that to say, actually, that pain it's an old pain. It's not actually there anymore. And I'm not saying that you don't feel it, because we definitely still feel it, right? But it's just the way that our brain is wired in that moment. So it's taking these really small steps to start to allow the body to realize, actually, I'm safe. And when I'm safe, I don't have to put those triggers on of alarm bells saying, oh my gosh, get me out of here. And that goes with when we're working through trauma, right? It's taking these really small steps to start to rewire the brain to help the body and the mind feel more comfortable and at ease in the moment. And so it's, all of these things, yoga therapy, mindfulness, somatic work, they're all very much interconnected, because we are all interconnected. There's not, just one thing and then another thing. We can't really compartmentalize everything, which we like to do, because that's what makes sense to us, right? But we can't really do that, because everything is connected. We're connected to our environment where we're living. We're connected to the way that we interact with others. We're connected to the way that we speak to ourselves. We're connected to the way that we move, the way that we eat, right? Everything is absolutely connected. And so how can we start to reconnect with that, to understand that with awareness, and then take those small steps to support us?
Well, yeah, wow, that's good. Lots to digest on that. What I'm seeing is kind of a common thread that seems like mindful movement really can significantly help to reduce stress or promote overall well-being. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely can. Movement is really, really important. We know, like, exercise is super important, right? Think they recommend like a minimum of 150 minutes a week. So that's about a little bit less than 30 minutes a day, of moderate activity, right? And this is really important, for example, for cardiac health, because when we get that tension build up in the body, as I mentioned before, this can have a huge impact on our heart, and it also has a huge impact on our lungs. And so if we're able to get that movement, then we're able to release that sort of that pent up tension, which a lot of us don't move as much as we should. And we don't necessarily, when we do move, we don't necessarily move the way that is most supportive to our body either. Right. And so this is where that mindfulness comes in, because, for example, for me, I used to love running. That was my big thing that I did. Since I injured my back, that is not something that is available to me, at least at the moment. Slowly getting my body back to working a little bit more as it had before, but that's just not available. So, like, towards the beginning, after I was better from my injury, quote unquote, I thought, oh, I'm going to go running. This will be fine. I want to go running again. And that wasn't quite the best decision. I maybe pushed myself a little bit too far. And I definitely regretted it days later. So it's, when we're doing these movements, whatever they are, right? Like, ask yourself in that moment, is this something that I can do that I will be able to do in a way that I won't regret it later? Right. I think this is an important question that we should all be asking ourselves, and not like, oh, I'm going to be sore later. Like, okay, sometimes that's good, right? Getting sore isn't a bad thing, but like, is this going to get me to the point where I'm in a lot of pain, right? Especially if you're in that moment where you're feeling that persistent pain already. Like, is it going to really set me back? We don't want to set ourselves back. We want ourselves to feel comfortable and at ease with whatever we're doing. So, getting that mindful movement in and being aware of what we're doing, how our body is responding to that mindful movement is really important. But yeah, it's important because it helps release that tension in the body. It helps energy move better. It helps blood flow move better. It increases, the air in your blood. It allows the lungs to work better, right? So all of these things are incredibly important. And as we get older as well, right? Like our balance, our stability, all of that is very important. And if we don't take care of ourselves when we're younger, this is going to have a huge impact on us when we're older. So keeping that up throughout our entire lives is very important.
Yeah. So so a small backstory. We're both martial arts instructors, and one of the ways that we're working with students that have an injury or are older, sometimes what we would suggest them is don't do this if it's going to cause you to not be able to go to work in the for tomorrow, or if it for and I think that is a good way for the students to conceptualize, like, okay, maybe everybody else can do this, but I don't have to do this, and that's okay because I know that it's going to be detrimental to me tomorrow or next week or whatever. And you're right. It's not just that muscular pain that is the worrisome. It's the physical pain of not being able to get out of bed tomorrow to go do your job that you have to do to get paid. So being mindful in those movements and making sure that it's something that your person is capable of doing, and what is the intent or purpose or reason that I want to do this thing that maybe I shouldn't do, and start to question, like, is this something I actually have or need to do? And if so, what's the benefit of it? What's the detriment to it? And then balance and weigh that out and see which side wins.
Yeah, exactly. And taking it in those small steps as well, right? If you're someone that hasn't been moving a lot, like just jumping in and like running 5K maybe isn't the best thing, because like you say, the next day you might not be able to get up very easily and go to work. Or if you do, you might be there in a lot of pain and not being able to focus at work. So, maybe just start off with, you run 1K, but that running 1K isn't a full run of the 1K. Maybe it's like you run for a little bit and then you walk for a little bit. Maybe you take a pause, maybe you run for a little bit more, right? And it's slowly building this up. And I think that is a lot of, well, my experience at least. I am very much a type A sort of person. I just push myself and go, and stopping and pausing and all of that is not something that comes naturally to me. And it's been a real journey for me to learn that it's okay to do things little by little. And actually, it can be very beneficial in the long term, because not only do you not injure yourself, but you also create more of a habit out of it. And you're able to really stick with it longer, which is really important for us, right? Because of our busy lives, because of everything that we have going on, it's really easy to get out of habit of doing these quote unquote healthy things, right? Because we have a lot of pressure to do other things, or maybe not pressure, but we have a lot of, stimulation to do other things that aren't necessarily as beneficial for us. And so creating these healthier habits can be tricky. And when we take it in these little tiny steps, maybe these little tiny steps are so minuscule at the beginning, you're like, I'm not doing anything, right? But the fact that you're doing them on a consistent basis makes it easier. And then once that becomes easy, then you go, okay, then I take the next step and I take the next step. And then all of a sudden, you're doing something way more than you would have been doing otherwise if you just jumped straight in. So it really is very beneficial for us to take these little steps forward with anything, whether it's getting more exercise or learning a martial art. I'm sure you guys have lots of ideas more than I do about that, right? But you aren't just going to have someone go straight into the difficult stuff. You're going to work them first to make those, those smaller movements muscle memory before you add on to that. And that is the same with pretty much anything that we do in our lives, right? So I think that it's a really important skill for us to make.
Yeah, I think, you're speaking about taking it slow, especially in the beginning. I think that is monumental, and people often, like you said, that they overlook that. And let's take that idea of that the 5K. You okay? I want to move. I want to run a 5K. Okay, maybe you change run to move. I want to move for 5K, and then you
Yeah.
allow yourself by changing run to move. Okay, I have to move for 5K. Maybe I walk this much and I run this much. I walk this much. I run this much, and you're moving for that length of time or that length of distance which you wanted to move for. You can check that box, but because you changed the word run to move, then you're allowed to do it in your own way that makes it so that not only can you do it today, but you can do it tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And hopefully that will create a sense of joy and accomplishment because you were able to do it. And you did it in your own way, just by, in that instance, just by switching one word out. But that applies to lots of different things. If you can kind of bring yourself to define what it means to do it, and then allow that definition to be a little bit flexible, mold it to something that you can do at the moment so that you can sustain that movement moving forward, I think is huge.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that goes back to, and I really like that you switched that, right? Because that goes back to what we were talking about before is, that how we're speaking to ourselves. Right. And so often it's one little word that we need to change, right? That then allows us to sort of reframe it to ourselves that, oh, okay, I don't need to, be as harsh on myself. I can get that movement in. It doesn't have to be running. It can be just movement. Right. And when we do that, we're much better at supporting ourselves, because we're not being negatives to ourselves. We're not judging ourselves. We're saying, oh, I've been able to move this much. That's great. Look at me. As you say, tick that box, right? And also we're more likely to show up for ourselves because of it. Because if we're not judging ourselves, then we're like, okay, yeah, let me just try this one out. Let me try this next step out. But when we're judging ourselves, it's like, oh, no, I can't do it because I'm not going to do it well. Right.
And not only that, and you did it, for those of you that can't see, your body kind of tensed up, and you say, I can't do that, and that tense up, it makes it harder to do those things because you are physically resisting those things that you want to do anyway. So that's interesting. Again, I was able to I could see you do that, but absolutely, people do that. They're like, oh man, I can't do that. And they tense their whole body up, and of course that makes it more adverse to be able to do those things.
Yeah, it goes back into that stress mode.
Yes. Now, I'm curious. You mentioned breath work earlier, and breath exercises I think are often underestimated in stress management. Can you share the importance of breath work in reducing stress and providing provide some practical breathing exercises?
Yeah. So first off, and I want to be really clear with this, breath work, if you are in an acute state of anxiety, don't jump straight into breath work. First, focus on coming back into the body. Because if we jump straight into the breath work, then that can create more stress and anxiety within the body. And you can increase hyperventilation and that sort of thing. So first off, just so we're all clear, if you're feeling a panic attack, don't go straight to the breath. Focus first on coming into your body. Observe, with your senses, what are 5 things I can see? What are 4 things I can hear? What's 3 things I can feel? What are 2 things I can smell? 1 thing I can taste, for example. And if you can't do any of that, that's fine. But just bringing your awareness to all those different aspects, right? And then coming into the breath. So yes, breath is amazing. Breath is our superpower. Breath tells us how we are in that moment. So our inhale generally is connected to our sympathetic nervous system. So this is the fight, flight, freeze response of our nervous system. Our exhale generally is connected to our parasympathetic part of our nervous system, so the calm, rest, digest. So when we are in that stress mode, our inhales will be longer, they'll be sharper. They'll probably be more in the chest, right? We tend to breathe higher. When we are calmer, more relaxed, our exhale will be longer, or it'll be more neutral with the inhale. We'll probably be breathing deeper in our body. So you might feel that more in the abdomen or in the rib cage. And this is something that's really important for us to know about ourselves, because if we're able to pause and just check in with the breath and go, oh, well, A, am I breathing? Because lots of times we hold our breath as well. B, how am I breathing? So where am I feeling this breath in my body? Is the inhale longer than the exhale? And none of this should be, right? This is all with mindfulness, right? So it's just awareness. It's not judging it in any way. It's just going, okay, this is what's happening. And then with that awareness, okay, how can we like take that next step forward to support ourselves? So that might be, and one of the things that I think is really important is just working to get your inhale equal to your exhale. And so, for example, if you're checking in with yourself and you're realizing, like, my inhale is a lot longer than my exhale. Okay, so count that inhale. How long is your inhale? Maybe your inhale is 5 counts. Your exhale is maybe 2 counts. Okay, so can I add one more count on to that exhale? So, okay, I'm inhaling and then I'm exhaling just a little bit longer. And then little by little, you start feeling, okay, that feels comfortable. All right, so can I add another count on there? Right, and so you're just constantly working with this. We're not jumping straight into, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but sometimes when we jump straight into something like box breathing, which is typically breathing in 4, holding for 4, breathing out 4, holding for 4, this is actually can be triggering and activating for people because they're not in the sort of the process of being able to do that. So it's okay, can I just come into this point of just finding that balance to the inhale and the exhale? And then when you find that balance, okay, can I add in any pauses in between those? So can I add that? So when you inhale and then you pause and you hold your breath, maybe you're holding it for a couple of seconds. Maybe it's just I noticed that I held the breath. Okay. And then exhale. And then I'm noticing I'm just holding my breath out and then I'm inhaling. Right. So I tend to teach a little bit more like a rectangular breath instead of a box breath, because sometimes depending on the person, depending on the situation that they're living, maybe, especially if they're pregnant or something like that, you like holding the breath isn't necessarily beneficial. And so, maybe we just do it for a couple of counts, or we just do it with that awareness of, okay, there is a pause. There is that natural pause between the inhale and the exhale. So that can be really, really helpful of just coming back into the body if you're feeling acute stress or overwhelm. And then B, just little by little noticing, bringing awareness to the breath. How am I breathing? All right, so this is how I'm breathing. This is what my inhale and exhale look like. Can I even out that inhale and exhale little by little? And then from there, can I notice a little pause in between the inhale and the exhale and the exhale and the inhale? Maybe just watching those pauses, okay, that feels comfortable. Can I hold my breath between the two? And then little by little working to get it to be more, if it's needed, to be more like that square.
All right. I get all kinds of questions for this, because breath work is something I know just the real surface base level about. And so with breath work, I'm curious, have you heard of, I think it's called the physiological sigh, the double inhale and then the exhale?
Mm-hmm.
Can you
I don't know it by that term, but yes, I do know that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
from what I understand is you do that when you're in a relatively stress state, like almost not maybe not quite fight or flight, but in that sort of fight or flight kind of state, and that can help to bring you back and calm you because of the, I don't know, the parasympathetic nervous system and the response that it has to that double inhale exhale. And I guess what what about that? What about that double inhale exhale allows your body to be more calm, to bring that calmingness back in?
I don't know all of the science behind it, but I would definitely say that because you're breathing once and then you're breathing another time on top of that, it's sort of this sort of you're creating that pause because you have to hold your breath a little bit and then you're breathing on top of it, that your body's going, oh, what's going on here? And then you have that longer exhale, which ignites the parasympathetic. So this is definitely something that can be really great for when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. I totally agree, because it's sometimes you can do two, or you can do like a stair step. Sometimes it's called stair step breath or mountain climber breath as well. There's also Sanskrit terms, but I don't need to bring those up. So it's about taking these little steps of breath on top, and it's one part of it too is you're expanding in the lungs, so you're getting your lungs to work, where before it's probably just mainly in the chest. So, but if you're doing those steps on top, you're getting like more of a fuller movement in the rib cage, in the lungs, getting the diaphragm to expand a little bit more. So you're getting that movement, that internal movement in the body, which probably wasn't moving very much because it was super tense and tight. So you're allowing the body to move, and then with that smooth exhale out, the parasympathetic turns on and goes, oh, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. Another thing that can just be helpful is just doing a ha breath. So like if you're tense, and this is something I bring it a lot with, especially with people that are working through like persistent pain. If we're doing certain movements, I might notice the person like not breathing. And it's like, okay, first, like what's one of the first things that we always say is like breath, like soft breath is good. So if you're noticing that you're not breathing, like releasing it and then getting that, like, so that's kind of that reminder to the body, like, oh yes, I need to breathe. Which can be really, really beneficial as well.
Yeah, I think it was James Nestor wrote a book. It's called Breathe or Breath or something like that. It's been a couple of years since I've read that one, but I read that, and I feel like because I read that and it was about breath work and breathing, my mind now is always aware of how I'm breathing, which is probably really good, but it is also really kind of interesting because breathing is something that obviously I've done forever and everybody does forever, but you're not, until you actually are paying attention to how you're breathing, it's a weird kind of background process that happens. And in that he talked about breathing in through the nose is incredibly beneficial. In fact, probably the way that everybody should be breathing, and not into your mouth because of all the side effects that comes with that. Changes your facial structure. If you're breathing in through your mouth, very likely you're bringing into your chest and not into the diaphragm. And thinking about bringing in through your nose and doing diaphragmatic breathing is beneficial. So I guess my question is, what can the listeners do to help to breathe in a more efficient manner, and without that kind of continual thinking of, okay, I have to breathe and this is how I have to breathe type of mentality? Can you offer any benefit to that?
Yeah. And I totally understand what you mean. When I first started like working with breath work, it was like, oh, then all I could think about was how I was breathing. So I totally get that. So our nose is the organ of our body that was designed to breathe. Our mouth was not. Obviously, they're connected, so we can breathe through our mouth. But yes, you're exactly right. Everything that our nose does, from filtering the air, from connecting with other parts of the body to have the air move more fluidly throughout the body. And also when we're exhaling through the nose, we release more of a chemical in the body called nitric oxide. And this chemical helps open up the little sacs in the lungs, which I'm totally blanking on the name. They start with an A. Anyway, helps the lungs work better. Totally blanking on this word. I'm going to remember it after this. But anyway, and so it allows us to breathe more fully. So something like an humming actually releases more of this in the body. And it can be a really good way. Not only is it more relaxing and calming for the body, but then also brings more air into the lungs. So I have older students who, you know, when they're working out and they're noticing that their breath is getting quite tight and heavy, you know, they'll start humming and they'll notice like, oh, my body is relaxing. I'm able to get more air in. So that's kind of a fun little note. Not necessarily what you're talking about, but or what you were asking for, but yeah, the humming can be really beneficial. So we should be breathing as much as we can through the nose. Obviously, if we're stuffed up or we have another reason that we can't, that's not available to us. But as best as we can, breathing through the nose is very important. Also, when we're sleeping, breathing through the nose helps us sleep better, because if we're breathing through our mouth, we're not actually sleeping as well. And that can lead to more issues with like insomnia or yeah, it can lead to other things. So if we want to start breathing better without focusing on all the time, I would suggest having a breath practice. So in the morning or in the evening, to start off with, just doing it once a day. And then, like we talked about before, little by little, building this up, maybe doing it for longer, but for just a couple of minutes, just practicing some breath work. Seeing if, you know, just observing how you're breathing. And then noticing, okay, can I feel expansion in the sides of my ribs and the back of my body? Because a lot of what we think about when we think of our lungs, when we think of breathing, we're thinking of the front of our body. But actually, we have a lot more space in the back of our body that we should technically be breathing from. So can we just start working in a way that helps with that expansion? So one way to kind of imagine our torso is like an umbrella. And so we want to breathe in a way that opens the umbrella from the top, opens the umbrella from the bottom towards the top. So we're opening the rib cage in sort of this 360 degrees, and then we're closing it from the top to the bottom. And just kind of practicing that. So people, if you're listening and you want to try this, if you create like a little hamburger with your hands, and so you're sort of bringing your thumbs down, the fingers on top, having that space for the hamburger there, and then you can bring your hands to the lower ribs and just sort of see when you're breathing in right now, do you feel any expansion there? Do you feel expansion in the side ribs? And do you feel expansion towards the back of the body? A lot of us, especially when we start working with this, we don't, because we breathe a lot in the chest, because we're in that tend to be stress mode for so long that we've switched how we're breathing. So naturally we would have breathed lower and getting more of that movement in the rib cage. But because of our lifestyle, because of lots of different things, traumas that we may have experienced, that breath switches. And we could also have something that's called like reverse, quote unquote, reverse breathing. It's not wrong. It's just our body responding to perhaps a trauma that we've experienced. And so when we breathe, instead of having that expansion outwards, we actually pull in. So it's like doing the opposite. And then when you're exhaling, you would feel that expansion. So it's, once again, this isn't necessarily wrong. So if you're listening, you're like, I do that. That's okay, right? Like that's your body, and it's done that to protect you and support you. But if we're wanting to then change that, so we get more fluid motion, we're gaining more from our breath, then we would work little by little, just a couple of minutes a day, to get the body moving in a way and breathing in the way that's most supportive for it. And the more you do this, the more you practice it's like any of the muscles in the body, right? It becomes more of a muscle memory, and it starts working in that way more fluidly without you having to think about it. So that's what I would say. I would say to definitely just take little moments throughout the day to practice, one step at a time, and also probably to work with someone that knows how to work with breath. Because our breath, yes, we breathe all the time, but depending on how we're breathing or what practices we're doing, it can bring up a lot of stuff for us. Because once again, everything is connected. And so, those experiences, traumas, whatever that might be, sort of stuck in the somatic, in the body, then they can come out as well. So working little by little with someone that knows how to sort of guide that transition can be really important.
Well, Tess, I got to say, it's been a pleasure to have you on a show and exploring the world of holistic stress management with you. Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to leave our audience with?
I think the most important thing is to be compassionate with yourself and whatever you're experiencing, not judging yourself for like, oh, I've been doing all these things. Like that's okay. That's your body just trying to do what's best for you in the moment and with the tools that you have. And in your journey of starting to release stress and work through, if you're experiencing burnout, fatigue, persistent pain, to really take it one step at a time, and to give yourself that grace that it's okay to take things one step at a time. And to have fun and explore what feels good for you, what feels right in your body. And no matter what I say or what someone else says, like it's your body and you know best. And we have a lot of wisdom in our body that if we just take the time to pause and connect with it, we can learn a lot.
Very good. And if our listeners wanted to get in contact with you, where could they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook, so you're more than welcome to come connect with me there. It's Tess Jewell-Larsen, so it's my name. And then as well, my website, www.tytonyyoga.com. So that's TYTONI yoga.com. You can connect through me through that as well.
Very good. Thank you. I'll be sure to leave those in the show notes for you as well. Remember, listeners, when it comes to managing stress and finding balance, small steps and this holistic practice can make a world of difference. Until next time, stay mindful, stay balanced, and keep thriving.